Welcome to The Fight on Matrix Midwest with Randy Carricker.
Hi, kids. Welcome to the show. Great to have you with us on a perfect start to the week. A lot coming up. Can the USA win the Men's World Cup? One expert thinks so. Heading into the last 6 weeks before the trade deadline in MLB, people have Cardinal rumors, and a certain segment of golfers really struggled at the U.S. Open. But let's get things started with our quick hit, sponsored by St. Luke's. And the Cardinals come home for another homestand after the Royals took 2 of 3 from the Redbirds. The Redbird defense had a rugged weekend that undermined the starting pitching, and in 3 games, the starters delivered only 8 2/3 innings with a 9.82 earned run average. In the finale, Dustin May, coming off the best start of his career, went just 2 innings and allowed 6 earned runs, but he was backed by J.J. Weatherholt's 2 home runs. Mason Wynn and Ivan Herrera also went deep. So the offense is there, but Riley O'Brien was the last of 7 relievers, and the bullpen has been taxed. The Redbirds will need some good starting pitching this week. In KC, the Royals had Nelson Velasquez running all over the field in the opener. He doesn't catch many of them, and his error allowed the Royals, and look at that, oh, you got to catch that one. That error allowed the Royals to have a run score, and it gave them another out. You never know what would have happened if that catch would have kept it a 3-2 game. Also in Kansas City, runner at second, 1 out, and Nathan Church's throw after this base hit goes off the mound for an error. And the runner, Massey, moves up but eventually scores. There it is, and boom, there's Massey at second base. Those little things add up. The Cardinals lose. Matthew Liberatore and Michael McGreevy taking a lot of heat. And to be sure, they weren't great, but when you give the opposition extra outs and extra bases, inevitably, it comes back to haunt you. And that's what happened to the Cardinals in Kansas City. You got to play clean baseball. That's what Tony La Russa always said. If you play clean baseball, inevitably, the other team is going to lose it. And the Cardinals were the other team over the weekend. When you don't have a ton of power, and the Cardinals don't, you have to allow the other team, you can't give the other team extra runs, and that's exactly what the Cardinals did. The USA World Cup team took care of business against Australia, and they'll play in the knockout round. But even though they've won Group D, they do have a final Group D game against Turkey on Thursday. We're all fired up, but this World Cup is a huge mountain to climb. Most pundits are saying the U.S. doesn't have a chance, but Fox's Zlatan Ibrahimovic disagrees.
I want one word from you. Can the U.S. win this World Cup, yes or no?
Yes.
Wow, one of the all-time greats with quite a statement there. But U.S. MNT head coach Mauricio Pochettino still preaching one match at a time.
I think we need to keep, believing and approach every single day that we were approaching from the day one. Believing that we can win, knowing that we need to work really hard, but in the same time enjoying the time together, building our, every day our journey until to the next game. Yes, it's not changed too much my view or my dreams or my what I am seeing. No, I think it's much better when you show good performance and win the games. I think make easier everything. But in the same time is to keep believing and of course, now, before we were talking, it was 1 game, 3 points. Now it's 2 games, 6 points. We need to go for the next one.
All right, I sit here in St. Louis, and I watched the 2006 and 2011 Cardinals win the World Series. I watched the 2019 St. Louis Blues win the Stanley Cup. I watched the 1999 St. Louis Rams win the Super Bowl. So I'm a believer. The next USA match against Turkey is on Thursday at 9 o'clock in L.A. At the U.S. Open, Wyndham Clark started the final round with a 6-shot lead over Scottie Scheffler, Tom Kim, and others, but it was Sam Burns, who was 7 shots back to start the 4th round, who staged the biggest threat to Clark. Burns barely missed a birdie putt on 18, so that Clark just had to par out to win. He played well for pretty much the whole tournament, and the crowd was decidedly against him. Now, part of that was him playing with fan favorite Scottie Scheffler, no doubt about that. Scheffler finished 3rd, by the way. But don't forget, Clark destroyed the lockers in the locker room at Venerable Oakmont last year, and after the U.S. Open as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten a lot of grief since last year, rightfully so. The thing that's unfortunate is that's not who I am, what happened last year. And I'm hoping I can win back the fans that I had or some new fans because, it was a terrible incident. And, I really feel like I can show people that I'm fun and outgoing, I'm fierce, competitive, love the game, respect the game, and I just had a bad moment. So hopefully I can win those people back. And, I definitely feel like I'm in a better place. And, hopefully a great weekend and a great rest of the year. Maybe I'll gain all those fans back.
Okay, Wyndham, aside from Biff and Tad from the country club, who were your fans? So let's not just say it's New Yorkers and they're tough. Clark knows why he was being jeered, and he deserved it. Now, if he does act like that and he shows remorse and contrition for what he did at Oakmont for a little bit while longer, he can become somebody that fans love. But is he ever going to be loved more than Scotty Scheffler, who's like one of the best guys in the world? I don't think so. Hey, you would have loved for the Blues to be in on this, but they just couldn't be, unfortunately. St. Louis and Brady Tkachuk is headed to Florida to play with his brother Matthew. Ottawa gets 2 first-rounders this year and a future 1 and a 2. The Blues, of course, have 3 first-rounders this year that are at least comparable to Florida's. But according to The Athletic, St. Louis and Brady would give up his no-movement clause from Ottawa only to go to Florida, Vegas, Carolina, or Minnesota. Meanwhile, ESPN suggests this offseason trade for the Blues. Anaheim would get Colton Parayko, and the Blues would get a 2027 first-round pick and defenseman Stian Solberg. And ESPN says why it would work. Well, he said, go take a look at the Ducks' defense right now. The players who are either under contract or team control are still young. Not that Parayko is a fix-all solution, but he would give the Ducks an experienced top-pairing right-handed shot who can play heavy minutes. He would come at a cost, both in terms of capital and salary, but would be a strong starting point toward adding to a defense that gave up too many high-danger scoring chances in the regular season. They say the swap is somewhat similar to what the proposed deal with the Blues in Buffalo was. Given that the Ducks are a returning playoff team, Parayko might be inclined to go to Anaheim. Now, I'd nibble if I were the Blues. Here's what Elite Prospects wrote about Solberg 2 years ago when he was drafted. What defines Solberg above everything else is his mean streak. He's not content just repelling opponents. He wants them to be as close as possible, and it's then easier for him to press his stick into their back. He inflicts pain every chance he gets, immobilizes opponents, and knocks them away from the front of the net. So he would be a good guy to get. I think the Blues should be intrigued by that. Now, here's one thing I want to say about Brady Tkachuk. It wasn't too long ago that St. Louis was a destination. Dale Howardchuk, a Hall of Famer, wanted to come here. Al McInnes wanted to come here. Phil Housley wanted to come here. Brendan Shanahan, Scott Stevens, Paul Correa, Paul Stastny, all wanted to come here. Even the greatest of all time, Wayne Gretzky, wanted to come to St. Louis. The Blues were a destination franchise in the NHL. Clearly, that isn't the case anymore. Matthew didn't want to come here. Brady didn't want to come here. The Blues have tried to get multiple free agents who wound up elsewhere. So, for that reason, and I don't know why St. Louis isn't a destination anymore. Maybe it's because of the taxes. Maybe it's because of the area. Maybe it's because of the climate. I don't know. But I can tell you this, the Blues' approach in getting young, controllable players is clearly the right one. If you can't get free agents to come, if you can't get people that have no movement clauses to want to come to your team and town, then the thing to do is get players that don't have a choice and try to keep them around that way. And then sign the guys that like it, like Broberg and Holloway, and keep the guys that really do want to be in St. Louis in St. Louis. It's a shame, and I don't know how St. Louis becomes a destination again, but I think the Blues are doing the right thing. Finally, one more golf, and this will likely be my final comment on the LIV Tour until they shut her down in the next 6 to 8 months, but their stars aren't really golf stars anymore. Bryson DeChambeau, a YouTube star, and Jon Rahm missed the cut at the U.S. Open. The Tour had 13 players start this weekend, and 7 missed the cut. Of those that did play on the weekend, Tyrrell Hatton and Dustin Johnson performed best. Joaquin Niemann would have been in better position were it not for the 11 he took on the 6th hole on Thursday. He hit 2 drives, the second one into a colony of fire ants. The rules official said he had to hit from the fire ants, and so he swung his club at the ground and then threw it 50 yards. That cost him a 2-stroke penalty, but it was funny. Of all the players that left for LIV, Brooks Koepka in the 2023 PGA and Bryson in the 2024 U.S. Open are the only major winners since the league started. As it turns out, it may wind up being a golf graveyard for a lot of guys. And for good young players like 33-year-old Thomas Dietrich, 24-year-old David Puig, 30-year-old Lucas Herbert, and especially 32-year-old Cameron Smith, leaving for LIV looks like it's going to be a grievous career error, because I don't know how those guys play their way back onto the PGA Tour and have high-profile positions on the tour. If they wouldn't have left for LIV when they did, they could be in the spots of people like Colin Morikawa right now, or Thigala. But right now, the young guys are taking over on the PGA Tour, and the 30-somethings, they aren't going to get an opportunity to bounce back after even if they do use the World Tour to try to get back on the PGA Tour. It's going to be too late. They have made a grievous career error. And the LIV Tour, Jay Delsing told us last week, everybody in the golf world that he's talking to says, hey, it's not coming back. The LIV Tour is dead, and it might be dead now. They might not have any more tournaments. Those are your quick hits, sponsored by St. Luke's. Top-notch doctors in everything from heart health to orthopedics and more. Visit stlukes-stl.com today. Later in the show, I'm going to have a daily wager for you. I'm going to talk a little soccer. I need to get back in the winner's circle. The Cardinals didn't do me any favors over the weekend. Next up, though, we're going to go around the horn with news and notes from Major League Baseball. That's coming your way in The Fight. Now for a trip around the horn, news and notes from the major leagues. And we'll start with first base. Trade rumors in a couple of stunning pieces to me at ESPN.com and MLB.com. The Cardinals are considered possible landing spots for oft-injured 32-year-old Twins outfielder Byron Buxton and their right-hander Joe Ryan. They also have the Cards being a fit for Reed Detmers, Jose Soriano of the Angels, Freddie Peralta of the Mets, Casey Mize of the Tigers, Michael Wacha of the Royals, Seiya Suzuki of the Cubs, Matt Chapman of the Giants, and Seth Lugo of the Royals. MLB.com has the Cardinals as spots for Chapman and Peralta as well. Now, unless the Cardinals have dramatically changed their approach, I don't see them giving up good young assets for a rental. If you're going to acquire Matt Chapman, who's due $25 million a year through age 37 in 2030, why did you trade Nolan Arenado, who has less term left on his contract? Along the same lines, why trade Sonny Gray? Those lists don't make a ton of sense, but they are trade rumors, and we don't know what direction the Cardinals will go at the trade deadline. But there are contenders that could really use what the Cardinals have, Lars Nootbaar being one of those. Obviously, Jojo Romero is one of those. The Cardinals, by the way, are not completely averse to making deals for any of these players. Not all of them are non-starters for the Cardinals. So keep an eye on the Cardinals at the trade deadline, and they might even do a little bit of buying. But if they do, it's probably going to be for a player that has term left on his contract rather than somebody that becomes a free agent after 2026. Now, you think about a team like Philadelphia, and they've lost right fielder Adolis Garcia for the season, even though the Phillies would likely prefer a right-handed hitting outfielder because of how lefty they are. Lars Nootbaar would be a more experienced, dramatic improvement over what the Phils have in the outfield. Dave Dombrowski should at least call Chaim Bloom, because if you're going to make a deal, you want to make it for a guy that you're going to have a little bit of control over. Now, like I said, they already have Kyle Schwarber. They already have Bryce Harper. They also have Bryson Stott, their second baseman. Their best hitters are left-handed hitters. I'm sure that they'll pursue a right-handed hitter to replace the right-handed hitting Adolis Garcia's, but there's going to be a market for Nootbaar out there. And like I said, if you're Dombrowski, you get in touch with the Cardinals. The Athletics placed reliever Mark Leiter Jr. on the 15-day IL. He has a right hip impingement. But you say, Randy, why is that news? That's because they recalled Highland, Illinois, and Lindenwood product right-hander Jeff Hartlieb. So he's back in the majors. He was with the Pirates before, and now Jeff Hartlieb is up with the A's, so let's keep an eye on them. One of the great stories in baseball last year was lefty reliever Drew Pomeranz of the Cubs. After missing 3 years of baseball with injuries, he signed with Chicago and had a 2.17 earned run average in 57 games and struck out 57 in 49 2/3 innings. But life comes at you fast, and this weekend, the Angels, who had signed Pomeranz as a free agent, DFA'd him after he had a 5.01 earned run average in 25 games. Those are your trade rumors, and that's first base. Let's move on to second base and labor negotiations. Now, under the next proposal of major league owners, onboarding for young players would change dramatically. High school players would be ineligible for the domestic draft and need to be at least 2 years removed from graduation to be selected. An international draft would be implemented for every player outside of the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. So you'd have everybody outside of the U.S., Canada, and Puerto Rico now eligible for a draft. The domestic draft, currently 20 rounds, and the international draft will both last 12 rounds. I should point out here that Albert Pujols was a 13th round pick, and the draft would only be 12 rounds. The minimum age for the international entry of players would move from 16 to 18, and the minimum age for the domestic American draft would be 20 years old on September 1st. College players would be eligible after their sophomore year as opposed to their junior year currently, and signing bonuses for both would be hard slotted and capped at $200 million, around what international players get now and slashed in half from the current system for American players. All draft picks would be tradable, and college baseball, which MLB in a statement called an increasingly important pathway, would receive an influx of high-end talent annually and serve as a mandatory stop in the domestic development pipeline. Essentially, what has happened here is that MLB owners have watched the NFL work without minor leagues for years. College football is a free minor league system. And when this system is implemented, there might be one farm team for each major league team, but certainly not four. The quality of play will continue to decline because players will not have played as much baseball, but owners won't have near the expense because college will develop their players rather than them developing their players. By the way, undrafted players like, Bruce Sutter, Tom Herr, Larry Walker, Bobby Bonilla that weren't drafted in a 50-round draft could sign for a maximum of $10,000. Speaking of labor negotiations, Hall of Famer Tom Glavine was on Jeff Passan's podcast talking about these negotiations and was asked why players are so vehemently against a salary cap.
I think for us, the salary cap has always been viewed as a means to control the owners because they can't control themselves. That's how players have always viewed the salary cap. Our feeling has always been, listen, nobody's telling you what you have to pay us. Nobody's demanding what you have to pay us. You pay us what you want to pay us, and if you don't want to pay us, then we'll go to another team and find another team that's, maybe willing to pay us. So that's always been our argument, which, if you think about it, it's kind of odd in terms of most other unions that are negotiating wages and working conditions and all that stuff. We're essentially saying, pay us what you want.
All right, Tom Glavine's a smart guy, but he said there, you pay us what you want to pay us. But if the Pirates want to keep Paul Skeens, will they, with their 2025 revenues of $330 million, be able to compete with Dodger revenues of $850 million or Yankee revenues of $710 million? When one team is taking in 3 times more than another team, I don't think that the Pirates could pay him what they want to pay him. I think the small market teams are saying we can't pay a player rather than we don't want to pay a player. And that's where the big market dominance comes in. The 2015 Royals were the last team not in a top 10 market to win a World Series. Glavine talked about fans being uneducated about the nuances of this argument. Well, the players being uneducated about the disparity of revenues is a big problem too. When you have players like Manny Machado and Nick Kurtz saying that every team could do what the Dodgers do, that's a lack of education, and it's quite disingenuous. Glavine would do well to look at that. Look at the education of the players, and then look at why franchises in the NFL like Seattle, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore, that would be the Seahawks who won the Super Bowl, Kansas City who's won 3 of the last 6, the Steelers who have won 6, and the Ravens who have won a couple. Why do those NFL teams always seem to have a chance to win at all when baseball teams in the same markets like the Mariners, Royals, Pirates, and Orioles are never in the World Series hunt? Good question. All right, time for third base. Giants Pride Night. Like 28 other teams, the San Francisco Giants held a Pride Night last week, and the team issued caps to their players with rainbow-colored SF logos on the front. As you might expect, there are many people against Pride Nights, including several Giants players who wrote Bible verses on their caps on this particular evening. We should point out that they haven't inscribed their hats for other games during this season. Baseball, for anyone that's paid attention, has a long-standing rule that players aren't allowed to alter their uniform. That's why MLB initiated Players Weekend a few years ago, so that players should show off their own personality one weekend a year by having their nickname on their jersey and changing things to their specifications and likes. Well, after the players, pitchers Landon Roop, JT Brubaker, and Ryan Walker wrote variations of verses from the book of Genesis on their hats, and pitcher Sam Hentges just wore a regular cap rather than a pride cap, the Giants warned the players of the rule. MLB spokesman Pat Courtney saying, quote, "To be clear, this routine verbal warning not to wear the inscribed hat in future games is not disciplinary and had absolutely nothing to do with the content of the message. We respect players' rights and free expression. We have given the same warning numerous times in the past to players for messages such as Dad, Happy Mother's Day, I love Mom, and names of family members." Well, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley sent off a letter to MLB threatening their antitrust exemption, writing, quote, "I write with grave concern over your reported decision to issue a formal warning to 3 Major League Baseball players for publicly expressing their Christian faith. This follows a high-profile undercover investigation that revealed at least one MLB team discriminated against a player based on his Catholic faith. You must answer for what appears to be a pattern of discrimination within MLB against baseball players who profess their Christian faith." Okay, Hawley is from Missouri. Evidently, the Missourian, Hawley, isn't aware that next Sunday, the Cardinals of MLB will hold their 34th annual Christian Family Day at the ballpark. Current player J.J. Weatherholt will speak, along with Cardinals Hall of Famer Chris Carpenter and champions Jeff Suppan and Scott Spezio. Doesn't seem like there's much bias against Christianity to me with the Cardinals of MLB. Over the weekend, by the way, the Department of Justice opened an investigation into whether MLB discriminated against the 3 players. When asked by the San Francisco Chronicle if they felt they were discriminated against, Brubaker, Walker, and Hentges all said they didn't feel discriminated against. Roop declined comment. Are things so good in our country that the government has time and resources to investigate baseball's uniform rules? Just seems like there are better things to use their efforts on. All right, time for home plate. The home run derby is going to change again. Like the game with the pitch clock, the home run derby got so much better and action-packed with the 3-minute timer. Well, that's gone now. The rules that caused the derby to be interminable in the past are back this year. In the first round, 8 players will take 20 swings each. 20 swings, not 20 pitches, 20 swings. If they homer on their 20th swing, they can continue swinging until they make an out. Ties would be broken by the longest home run distance. The top 4 home run totals advance out of the first round, and those 4 players are seeded 1 through 4 based on their homer totals. In the second round, head-to-head matchups based on seeding, number 1 versus number 4, number 2 versus number 3, and the 4 players take 15 swings each. If they homer on their 15th swing, they can continue swinging until they make it out. Ties are broken with 3 extra swings each. The 2 winners of the head-to-head matchups in round 2 advance to the finals, and those 2 players get 15 swings each. If they homer on their 15th swing, this is, I know, difficult, but I'm reading it the way the rules are set up, they can continue swinging until they make it out. Ties are broken with 3 extra swings each. The last year, the players were given 3 minutes or 40 pitches, whichever came first, to hit as many home runs as possible in the first round, and it was great. The clock was first introduced in 2015 and led to some dramatic finishes, including Todd Frazier's last-second win in that first year. In this new format, it turns the home run derby into a slog again, which it will be. The format could be changed again next year. I have a feeling that this is happening because for ESPN, they wanted it timed. They wanted a TV show. Netflix, where the home run derby is this year, they don't care how long it goes. But I'll tell you what, it got really boring when they didn't have the clock before, and I have a feeling it's going to be really boring at the home run derby again this year in Philadelphia. That is our trip around the horn in Major League Baseball. And coming up in the list, the most breathtaking Cardinals Diamondbacks moments of all time. Stick around. Time now for the list. And with the Arizona Diamondbacks in town, we take a look at some of the most breathtaking moments in Cardinals Diamondbacks history. You know, Arizona's only been around since 1998, but they and the Cardinals have had some big moments in the games that they have played against each other. And we will start with our number 6. It was in the playoffs in 2001, and St. Louis and Kerry Robinson pinch hits for Mark McGwire in what turned out to be McGwire's last major league game, Game 5 of the NLDS in 2001 in Phoenix. He struck out swinging in his first 3 at-bats. The guy who was the engine that made the money that allowed the Cardinal franchise to rebuild at the turn of the century was due up in the 9th of a 1-1 game. And after Jim Edmonds singled, McGwire was called back to the dugout by Tony La Russa, so St. Louis and Kerry Robinson could pinch hit and bunt. Robinson did successfully move the runner over, but the next 2 hitters, Edgar Renteria and Mike Matheny, struck out swinging against Schilling. In the bottom of the 9th, Tony Womack singled home the winning run with 2 outs, and the Diamondbacks advanced with a 2-1 win in Game 5. But this is something that we thought we would never see in 97, 98, 99, 2000. In the playoffs in 2001, Mark McGwire walks back to the bench and gets pinch hit for by a guy he considered his father, Tony La Russa, so that Kerry Robinson could butt him over. And sadly, and we didn't know it at the time, that was the last game that Mark McGwire ever played. He had a 2-year, $30 million contract sitting in his desk drawer. It was already signed by Bill DeWitt. McGwire only needed to sign it, and he would get $30 million for the next 2 years, 2002 and 2003, regardless of how healthy he was. But he said he wasn't healthy enough to play anymore, so that wound up being his last major league appearance. All right, number 5, J.D. Drew. He was a polarizing figure in Cardinal history, but in this one, he hit a home run that made a game of what we were just talking about. Another one from Game 5 of the 2001 playoffs, and Schilling, who dominated in Game 1, did it again in Game 5. 1-0 Diamondbacks in the 8th. The Cardinals are on the verge of elimination when Drew steps in against Schilling. And this is one of the all-time great ones, 2001, and Jim Edmonds had told Drew what Schilling was going to throw, and Drew hits it out of the ballpark. That home run gave the Cardinals momentum. But as we told you in the first item on this list, Arizona would win it in the 9th and would eventually win the World Series over the Yankees. But that was maybe the highlight of J.D. Drew's Cardinal career, that home run off of Curt Schilling in the playoffs. By the way, Drew would have some pretty good playoff appearances for the Red Sox towards the end of his career. He was a really good player, and a lot of scouts will tell you still, to this day, that he was the best position player in college that they ever saw. All right, number 4. On August 20th, 2022, one of the many great plays that Nolan Arenado made for the Cardinals, they were in the midst of a rout, a 16-7 win over the Diamondbacks at Chase Field. Bottom of the 6th at the ballpark, and Andre Palante on the mound, Alec Thomas at the plate, and wow, what a play by Nolan Arenado, and a great play, by the way, by Paul Goldschmidt. And look at the grins on their faces, Nolan, and then the catch made, a bare hand, and that must have been 105 miles an hour, that throw, and he loved it, Goldie loved it, and that was one of the amazing plays that the Gold Glover made as a member of the Redbirds. The Cardinals would win 93 games that year, but those two, unfortunately, Arenado and Goldie, would combine to go 1 for 15 with 1 walk and 6 strikeouts in the NL Wild Card Series. Lost to the Phillies those 2 games, 1 for 15. You needed your biggest players to be your best players, and they weren't in that series. But man, they were great on that play, and they were great all season long. Goldie winning the MVP, Arenado finishing 3rd in MVP. They had a lot of fun, and that was one of the great plays that Nolan Arenado made, and it was in Arizona against the Diamondbacks. Okay, back to Mark McGwire. This is number 3. In the first month of the D-backs' existence in 1998, on April 14th, McGwire was off and running toward his record-setting 70 home run season. And after an 8-game homerless streak, he feasted on the expansion D-backs to the tune of 3 home runs. What a blast that was. And he would have another 3-homer game that season. But watch, boom, he hits it and it goes. He was unbelievable. And this really did set itself apart as one of the great shows that McGwire had. But he would put on shows in batting practice down in Arizona. They have massive windows at the top of the ballpark in left field. And he would regularly flirt with hitting balls through those windows during BP. And that's absolutely unbelievable. But his performance as a player in games, yeah, BP was unbelievable. But those 3 home run games, and you knew when he hit it, it would go. They were amazing, and it was fun to watch, and that was number 3 on our list. Okay, number 2, another home run. April 6th of 2001, Cardinal rookie Albert Pujols hits his first career home run and does it in Arizona. He had started his career in Colorado against the Rockies, but here in Arizona, the Cardinals' second trip of the season, the second series of the season, he stands in and bing, bang, and boom. The first of 703. Albert would hit 37 that year as he won Rookie of the Year, and that kind of just showed what he was capable of. He had had a magnificent spring training, and Armando Reynoso, his first victim, and he would hit 25 of his 703 home runs against the Diamondbacks. The only team not in his Cardinals or Angels division that he hit more against, the Kansas City Royals. So Albert with home run number 1 against the Diamondbacks. That was a breathtaking moment. Okay, number 1, Jose Jimenez against Randy Johnson. As a rookie with the Cardinals on June 25th, 1999, Jose Jimenez pitched a no-hitter. He was brilliant on this day, and he gets the ground ball. Fernando Vina gets him, and Jimenez has his only no-hitter of his major league career. Now, this was the first of 2 consecutive starts against the Diamondbacks in which he was sensational. In this one, he struck out 8, walked 2, and outdueled the future Hall of Famer Randy Johnson. In his very next start, Jimenez was lit up for 7 runs in an inning and a third in Houston. But when the Cardinals came home, he was paired up with the big unit again. And in that game, Jimenez tossed a complete game 2-hitter in another 1-0 shutout in which he beat Randy Johnson. That was definitely the highlight of Jimenez's Cardinals career. He was traded to Colorado in the Darryl Kyle trade and had 102 saves in 4 years as a Rocky, including a 41-save season in 2002. But Jimenez no-hitter, the number 1 breathtaking moment between the Cardinals and the Diamondbacks. That is the list. And coming up next for you here in the fight, we have our daily wager for you. I got to get back on the winning track, and I will next. Hey, summer is here, and it's a great time to be out exercising. And I ran into somebody over the weekend who had had a shoulder reconstruction at St. Luke's. And if you have orthopedic needs, maybe you need new knees, maybe you need new shoulders, maybe you need a hip replacement, St. Luke's is the place to go. Their state-of-the-art equipment is the best in St. Louis, but their state-of-the-art doctors are what make a difference. To you at St. Luke's, they aren't just a number. To them, you are a patient and you are a family member, and they will take care of you and make sure that you are feeling great when you get back on the path to walking, or you want to play pickleball, or you want to play golf. If you need orthopedic help, they have the best in the business at St. Luke's. And all you need to do is give them a call. And when you get to St. Luke's, their orthopedic specialists are going to take a look. They're going to give you the MRI. They're going to find out what you need. And then they have robotic state-of-the-art equipment to replace those knees or hips or shoulders to make sure that you're good to go for the rest of your life. They really are an amazing, incredibly efficient and incredibly affordable place to have here in St. Louis. It's St. Luke's, 314-205-6737, and you can find out more about their department, their orthopedic department, and what they can do for you at stlukes-stl.com. It's time for our daily wager here in the fight. And one thing that I've learned about the World Cup is that the stars ordinarily perform, right? You have Messi, Lionel Messi turning in a great performance. You're getting great performances across the board from the big guys. And one big guy that has not performed yet is Ronaldo. Now, he's taken a lot of heat, and he is older, and people say he's done. I'm not buying that, though. As Portugal plays Uzbekistan on Tuesday, Ronaldo is plus 235 to be the first goal scorer. Now, he's only minus 165 to score a goal. So other people are expecting him to score a goal as well, minus 165. But I think that he is so fired up because he's seeing everything that's being said about him that he's probably tired of the fact that people are saying, you're done. You can't play anymore. So I'm going to go with Cristiano Ronaldo to score the first goal for Portugal against Uzbekistan. And here's the thing. With that, at plus 235, we put $100 on that, and we're going to do pretty darn well. And it is fun to see the big guys. So let me do this again. Let me see if my 100 is working here. Oh, my keyboard isn't working. But our payoff is going to be $335. At plus 235, we're going to be in great shape, and we're going to do really well. And you know what? If you are going to bet on the World Cup, you can't go wrong with Mbappe. You can't go wrong with Messi. And you really can't go wrong with the big guy, maybe the greatest of all time, Ronaldo. Messi's probably considered the greatest, but Ronaldo's still right there. All right, that is our daily wager. It is Ronaldo to score the first goal on Tuesday, by the way, for Portugal against Uzbekistan. And that is our daily wager here in the fight. Coming up, we have today's fun fact, which is a fun one. We have story time with Uncle Randy, and we have this date in sports history, so stick around. All right, time for today's fun fact. And I am going to be completely transparent here. In baseball, I don't really know what goes into war. I have no idea how to calculate war. I don't know what the people that are putting war together, what their goal was when they decided, you know what, we need another statistic for baseball. So with that being the case, I'm telling you, I do not know what war is. I could have told you, like, if you would have asked me when I was 15 years old, well before there was war, if you would have asked me who the best baseball player of all time was, I would have said Babe Ruth. And he had the highest WAR, all right? If you would have asked me who the best Cardinal was during the course of the period from 2001 to 2011, I said Albert Pujols. And as it turns out, he had the highest WAR. So I think the eye test is probably the same as WAR, but they put some numbers to it. Well, it's a way for people, us as fans and front offices alike, to judge and to compare baseball players. And there is a numerical value to it. And by the way, there are two different kinds of WAR, one that's at Baseball Reference, one that's at Fangraphs. So you have F-WAR and you have B-WAR. Well, right now in B-WAR, and I would assume F-WAR, Jordan Walker is 9th in Major League Baseball in WAR for the 2026 season. And J.J. Weatherholt is 11th. So either way, whether you're looking at players with the eye test or you're using the numbers, I think we could all, as 15-year-olds or 21-year-olds or 63-year-olds, we could look at Major League Baseball and say, okay, is J.J. Weatherholt the 11th best player? And we can make a case for it. Is Jordan Walker the 9th best player? We can make a case for it. Weatherholt leads all second basemen in that statistic with 3.2 wins above replacement. Those two, Walker and Weatherholt, should be the fulcrum of the Cardinals' future. And here's a fact. If we look at the 5 tools of a 5-tool player, hit for power, run, field, and throw, both guys can do all of those things. There's not many, if any, teams that have 2 young 5-tool guys. And you're seeing Josh Baez here with this throw. Josh Baez is also a 5-tool player down at Memphis. On Sunday, he hit his 25th home run. He also had his 14th double. And he is going to be on his way to the Cardinals at some point. And he can do it all. So, and by the way, this was on Matrix Midwest on Saturday night. The Cardinals have a tremendous amount of athleticism on their team now and in the future with Baez. All they need to do is add some high-octane pitching to that mix, and they'll be the contender that they're saying they're planning to be. And by the way, that high-octane pitching is on the way. Quinn Matthews with another above-average start over the weekend for Memphis. You've got Liam Doyle. You've got Tanner Franklin on the way. You've got Jurangelo Senja, who arrived in the trade for Brendan Donovan. You've got Richard Fitz. You've got Dobbins. You've got an array of young pitching on the way. Bryson Motts, their minor league pitcher of the year last year, is still on the way. So the plan to have these young players arrive and be good is working at the moment. And to have those two, Walker and Weatherholt, be among the top 11 in WAR is pretty impressive. And I want to make one other quick point here among these players, okay? And this is not to denigrate what the Cardinals are doing under Chaim Bloom. But you got to give credit where credit is due. And the Cardinals are doing a much better job of developing young talent. But you know who was in charge of the Cardinal organization when Jordan Walker arrived on the scene as a member of the Cardinals organization? It was John Mozeliak. Lars Nootbaar, John Mozeliak. Mason Wynn, John Mozeliak. J.J. Weatherholt, John Mozeliak. Alec Burleson, Ivan Herrera, Jimmy Crooks, Pedro Pajes. All of these guys were on the scene and were drafted or brought into the organization under Mo. Now, did the Cardinals do a very good job of developing those players? No. But to say that the Cardinals couldn't evaluate young talent is kind of a misnomer, because Chaim Bloom was not in charge when those players were brought into the organization. And when the Cardinals are prepared to be good again, most of the players, the young players that are going to be in the system or rise up through the system, Josh Baez included, were drafted under the president of baseball operationship of John Mozeliak. So congratulations to him for getting a couple of guys that are in the top 11 in Major League Baseball in WAR. All right, time for story time with Uncle Randy, and Director Tyler is going to spin a wheel, and we're going to come up with a decade for you. We're going to come up with a sport for you, and I am going to come up with a story for you. And let's go back to the 1990s. The 80s. We landed on the 80s. We've got 1980s baseball. Well, this is kind of my wheelhouse, isn't it? All right, I'll come up with one for you. Let's go back to the late 80s. And, you know, there's a perception that the Cardinals were only good in 1982, 85, and 87 when they went to the World Series. Well, in 1984, the Cardinals were in the hunt until September. In 1986, they were bad. In 1988, but they were still around in September. But in 1989, the Cardinals had a chance. They went into Chicago over Labor Day weekend, and they were a game and a half out. And there was a game where Pedro Guerrero hit a long home run and kind of made a statement for the Cardinals. But here's what happened that weekend, that Labor Day weekend in Chicago in 1989. And the Cardinals had a chance to get even with the Cubs or overtake the Cubs in the standings. And third baseman by the name of Luis Salazar just killed them in the Saturday and Sunday games. But what really did the Cardinals in on that Labor Day weekend in 1989 is that both Todd Worrell and Willie McGee got hurt. And neither of them were the same player after Labor Day weekend that they were before Labor Day weekend. I am convinced that if those two would have stayed healthy, and by the way, Worrell wound up missing a couple of years because of his elbow injury, and McGee was never really the same that year for the Cardinals. He came back and won the batting title in 1990 before he got traded. But if those two don't get hurt, I think the Cardinals wind up winning the division that year. The Cubs wound up winning and losing to the Giants in the NLCS. Giants wound up going, obviously, to the World Series and losing the Earthquake Series to the A's. But if the Cardinals don't lose those two, might have changed the course of history. Gussie Busch had died in August of that year. But if those two players stay healthy, I think Whitey Herzog manages here for a longer time. I think the Cardinals have a great chance to go to the World Series that year, and I think it would have changed the fortunes of the Cardinal organization. It's amazing how fragile it can be, and when the Cardinals lost Worrell and Willie Labor Day weekend of 1989, I think that did change the course of Cardinal history. All right, that's story time with Uncle Randy, and now it's time for this date in sports history. We've had a lot of Mark McGwire here for whatever reason on this date, but on this date in 2001, the Giants beat the Cardinals 10-5, despite a home run by McGwire. It's the first meeting between teams with 500 homer hitters, Bonds and McGwire, since 1976. when Hank Aaron of the Brewers and Frank Robinson of Cleveland faced off. Bonds went 0 for 2 with 3 walks and a strikeout. He also had a rugged day in the field. But boom, the Cardinals got him on the strikeout there. The thing was, Big Mac hit the home run off of Levon Hernandez here. He won the battle, but the Giants won the war, winning by a score of 10-5. But it was from then, from 1976 until then, that there had been a game with 2 500 homer guys, and now we have multiple because so many 500 homer guys have arrived on the scene since 2001. We've had a lot of those games, but that was the first one since 1976, 86, 96, first time in 25 years you'd had a game with 2 500 home run guys facing off, and it happened right here at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. Okay, Cardinal baseball this week, the Arizona Diamondbacks are in town, and then another 1990s expansion team, the Marlins, are in town, and we have the Cardinals and the Marlins for you on Friday night right here on Matrix Midwest. And all week long, you need to check out Fastball. People are loving Cardinals Fastball. It's a 1-hour condensed version of the previous day's Cardinals game, and whether it is our friend Stephen Carey or Chip Carey, Brad Thompson, Mark Sweeney, you'll be able to hear those guys, and everything that you might have missed in a 2.5 or 3 hour game, you will get in 1 hour at noon and 4 here on Matrix Midwest. Tell your friends about it, and tell your friends also that you see The Fight with Randy Carricker every day at 5 and 10 p.m. We see you after the 4 o'clock showing of Fastball, and we also are re-aired at 7 o'clock the next morning. And of course, you can catch us on the Matrix Midwest app and First Alert 4 on. Just search for that as we air it every day at 7 o'clock on First Alert 4 on. Sign up to play in The Fight at matrixmidwest.com or email us at thefight@matrixmidwest.com. We record that on Wednesdays and air it on Thursdays and throughout the weekend. Hey, for our outstanding director, Tyler Klaus, I'm Randy Carricker. Thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next time in The Fight. So long, everyone.